The glass in the boardroom isn't just clear, it is invisible. If I reached out, I would expect my fingers to pass through it into the skyline of Midtown, but instead, there is the faint, rhythmic smudge of my own thumbprint near the latch. It's the only thing in this room that isn't perfect. Eleanor sits across from me, her hands wrapped around a ceramic mug that costs more than my first car. There is no steam. The tea has been sitting there for 20 minutes, untouched, a cold amber pool reflecting the recessed lighting of the ceiling. She hasn't blinked in a long time. She just watches the way I hold my pen. It's a heavy fountain pen, a gift from the board, weighted so specifically that it feels like an anchor pulling my hand toward the signature line of the revised speaker's agreement. The draft of my keynote sits between us. It's shorter now. The red ink Eleanor used to strike through the third paragraph hasn't fully dried, and the copper scent of the pigment fills the small gap of air between us. She didn't use a digital tracker. She wanted me to see the physical act of the removal. The paragraph detailed the specific predatory lending practices her firm used to gut the Northside district, the very district that raised me, the very people who pooled their money to send me to the convention where Eleanor first discovered my voice. She told me the paragraph was redundant. She said the audience already knows the problems, and what they need now is a vision of the future, a vision of partnership. My throat is dry, but the water in the baccarat carafe is too far to reach without breaking the silence. If I speak, the silence breaks, and if the silence breaks, the negotiation ends. Eleanor knows this. She is waiting for the secret hunger to override the muscle memory of my conscience. I want that stage. I want the 3,000 people in the auditorium to see a woman who looks like me, standing where only women who look like Eleanor have stood for 40 years. I want the book deal. I want the endowment for the foundation that I keep telling myself will undo the damage this single speech will cause. I am calculating the math of a soul, trying to figure out if saving 10,000 people later justifies betraying 5,000 people right now. Eleanor finally leans forward. The silk of her blouse doesn't rustle, it's too high quality to make noise. She places her hand over the red-streaked page, her palm covering the names of the families I promised to defend. She says my name. Just my name. It sounds like a prayer and a threat. She tells me that the Keynote A slot is a coronation, not just a speech. She reminds me that the press releases are already drafted. They are waiting for the send command. If I insist on the original draft, the slot goes to a policy wonk from D.C. who will spend 40 minutes talking about data points while the North Side continues to bleed in silence. At least with me, she says, they get a friend in the room. I look at the smudge on the glass again. It's a tiny, oily distortion of the world outside. I think about the community center basement where I wrote the first version of this speech. The air there smelled of damp concrete and industrial cleaner. Here, it smells of expensive ozone and Eleanor's gardenia-heavy perfume. I realize that the exit is right behind me. The door isn't locked. I could stand up, take my folder, and walk out. I could post the original speech on my blog. I would have my integrity, and I would have the crushing weight of obscurity. I would be right, and I would be broke, and the North Side would still be gutted by the end of the fiscal year. The exit mirage appears when Eleanor slides a small gold-plated key across the table. It's for the private suite at the venue. She tells me I need to rest, to get my hair done, to prepare for the transformation. She says the edit isn't a lie, it's a strategic pivot. If I omit the accusations, the firm will announce a $5 million community reinvestment fund during my introduction. I am the one who gets to hold the oversized check. I am the one who gets to claim the victory. The cost of the victory is simply the truth of how the wound was made. I am being offered the chance to be the bandage on a wound I am no longer allowed to call a stabbing. I pick up the fountain pen. It's heavier than I remember. The nib touches the paper right below the red ink, right where my identity ends and my brand begins. I think about the faces of the women at the grocery store back home. I tell myself I am doing this for them. I tell myself that $5 million is worth more than a few sentences in a 30-minute presentation. I am rationalizing the erosion. I am building a bridge out of the bones of the people I'm supposed to be crossing over to save. The failure point isn't the signature. It's the moment I realize I'm not even angry at Eleanor anymore. I'm grateful to her. I'm grateful she gave me a way to be successful without having to be a martyr. I sign the document. The ink flows smoothly, a dark, permanent blue that looks almost black in this light. The auditorium is a cavern of shadows and expectation. The air is thick with the scent of hairspray and expensive wool. I am standing in the wings, the gold-plated key heavy in my pocket, pressing against my hip. Eleanor is on stage now. She is wearing a dress the color of a bruised plum. Her voice carries over the sound system, amplified in velvet, telling the crowd about the courage of new leadership and the power of collaborative growth. She doesn't mention the North Side. She mentions emerging markets and unlocked potential. I look at the teleprompter. My speech is scrolling by. The third paragraph is gone. In its place is a series of platitudes about synergy and the resilience of the human spirit. It reads like a greeting card written by a debt collector. I feel the sweat slicking my palms, but I don't wipe them on my suit. I have to look composed. I have to look like the success story they've paid to see. I see the faces in the front row. These are the stakeholders. These are the people who signed the eviction notices. They are smiling at me. They aren't afraid of me. That is the realization that hits like a physical blow. They aren't smiling because they've been moved by my activism. They are smiling because I've been neutralized. I am the mascot for their benevolence. I am the proof that the system works, because look how far I've come. A young girl is sitting in the fourth row. She's wearing a Sunday dress that's a little too small for her, and she's holding a notebook. She looks exactly like I did 20 years ago. She is looking at me with a kind of hunger that makes my stomach turn. She thinks I'm the hero. She thinks I'm about to say the things that nobody else dares to say. She doesn't know that the version of me she's waiting for died in a boardroom with a cold cup of tea 3 hours ago. Eleanor reaches the climax of her introduction. And now, to show our commitment to the future we are building together, I am proud to announce the Northside Reinvestment Initiative, $5 million, directed by the woman who has been the voice of that community from the start. The applause is a tidal wave. It is deafening. It is a roar of self-congratulation from 3,000 people who just bought their way out of guilt for the price of a few luxury cars. I walk out into the light. The heat of the spotlights is immediate, scorching the back of my neck. I reach the lectern and look down at the teleprompter. The words are right there. All I have to do is read them. I open my mouth. My voice sounds thin, tinny through the monitors. I start with the thank yous. I thank the board. I thank Eleanor. I can feel her standing just behind me, a benevolent shadow. Every time I say a word that isn't mine, I feel a thread tighten around my throat. I am a marionette. I am the most expensive puppet in the city. I reach the place where the third paragraph should have been. My eyes skip over the synergy text. I look at the girl in the fourth row. I see her lean forward, her pen ready. I have a choice. I could say the words. I could tell them about the families who lost their homes. I could tell them about the interest rates that were designed to fail. I could burn the bridge while I'm standing on it. But I think about the suite. I think about the book contract waiting in my inbox. I think about the $5 million that won't exist if I break the script. I think about the fact that if I fail now, I'm not a hero, I'm just a breach of contract. I'm a liability. I read the lines. The words are hollow. They are husks of language, devoid of any meaning. We must look forward, not backward. We must embrace the opportunity for partnership. We must believe in the power of shared goals. The girl in the fourth row stops writing. She lowers her notebook. She doesn't look angry. She looks confused. Then, slowly, she looks disappointed. That is the sound of the door locking. That is the sound of the anchor hitting the bottom of the sea. I finish the speech. The standing ovation lasts for 3 minutes. Eleanor comes over and hugs me. Her skin is cool against my cheek. She whispers, "Perfect," directly into my ear. It isn't a compliment. It's a receipt. Afterward, in the green room, the champagne is poured into crystal flutes. The community reinvestment check is leaning against a velvet chair. It looks like a prop from a game show. The board members are shaking my hand, telling me how articulate I am, how reasonable I've become. They use reasonable like a badge of honor. It means I've stopped being a problem. I go to the bathroom and lock the door. I stand in front of the mirror and look at the woman in the $3,000 suit. I look at the gold key on the counter. I try to find the person who wrote the first draft, the one who wanted to set the world on fire. She isn't there. There is only a brand. There is only a strategic partner. I pick up the key. It's cold. I think about the smudge on the glass in the boardroom. I realize now that the smudge wasn't a flaw in the room. It was the only real thing in it. It was the only part of the world that Eleanor hadn't managed to polish away. And I've spent the last hour trying to polish myself into that same invisible, sterile perfection. I walk out of the green room and find the young girl from the audience. She's waiting by the exit, her notebook clutched to her chest. She wants an autograph. She wants me to write something inspiring. I take her pen. My hand is steady. I don't write, keep fighting. I don't write, change the world. I write, everything has a price. Make sure you know yours before you sit down. She reads it, blinks, and looks up at me. I don't smile. I can't. I just turn and walk toward the elevator that leads to my private suite. The doors slide shut with a soft, expensive hiss, and for the first time in my life, I am completely alone in a room full of everything I ever wanted. I sit on the edge of the king-sized bed. The sheets are Egyptian cotton, 400 threads per inch. They feel like nothing. The room is silent, the soundproofing so absolute that the city below doesn't exist. I wait for the regret to feel like a sharp pain, something I can fight or fix, but it doesn't. It just feels like a slow, steady cooling, like the tea in Eleanor's mug. I reach into my bag and pull out the signed contract. I look at my name. It looks like a foreign word. I realize that the Keynote A slot wasn't a platform, it was a coffin. And I didn't just sell my community. I bought the silk lining for the box. I lie back and close my eyes. The light from the hallway creates a thin, bright line across the ceiling. It looks like a crack in the world. I watch it until the shadows swallow it up, wondering if the $5 million will ever be enough to buy back the silence I just sold. I already know the answer. The math of a soul never balances. It only diminishes. The phone on the nightstand rings. It's Eleanor. She wants to know if I'm ready for the after party. She says the donors are eager to meet me. She says this is just the beginning. I pick up the receiver. I don't say I'm tired. I don't say I've changed my mind. I don't say I'm sorry. I'll be right down, I say. The voice isn't mine, but it's the only one I have left. It's controlled. It's rational. It's the voice of a winner. And as I stand up to straighten my jacket, I realize the most horrifying part of all. I'm already looking forward to the applause.